Hey, welcome to the Do Good Work podcast. Today I'm talking to Rob Buffington. Rob is the CEO of Gordian Business Solutions, and he's an experienced consultant in the HOA management space and brings a wealth of experience and knowledge to management companies and mid-sized businesses that struggle with vendor services, staffing, bookkeeping, and overall management issues. Rob doesn't just understand one or two aspects of the industry. He's been an HOA manager previously and has had experience on the vendor side working with HOAs. He currently owns and runs an accounting firm and a remote staffing company, both of which focus on servicing the HOA management companies. So he brings a well rounded, unique perspective to the industry. His overall professional mission is twofold: to provide the best possible service and consulting to clients and make a positive difference in the world. And on top of that, each of his companies are heavily involved in local charity work and are built on an employee profit sharing model. So everyone benefits from the success of their collective business ventures. Well, Rob, welcome to the pod.
Thank you for having me.
Rob was talking to a buddy before this call. We were just chit chatting, and I'm like, "Well, Rob's managed and owns 7 companies." And a buddy of mine was joking, "I can't even manage one." Tell me a little bit more about your goal with managing several companies remotely and how they run. I don't want to say run themselves, but how you manage to breathe life into them for them to run and manage. I think a lot of us founders and business owners are just having difficulty doing that with one. We'd love to get your insights of doing this at scale.
Well, the first thing I'll say is that almost all of these businesses are intertwined. They all do
Mm,
business with each other. Some of them share leadership. One is an accounting firm, one is a staffing firm. Obviously, those populate the others and do
mhm.
work with the others. But I would say the most important thing I do is I find good people, I pay them well, and I give them a lot of autonomy, but then also objective data tracking to make sure that there's supervision in place. And I certainly wouldn't pretend that I'm have learned all there is to learn. It's a moving target and I'm learning something new every day. So I make as many mistakes as the next guy.
But so I mean, they are intertwined and they are working with each other. But what would you say are some of your guiding principles when it comes to letting the teams run, not micromanage, but doing that in a way where you empower leaders within each company?
I would say one of the most important things I start with is radical transparency.
Okay.
The people that are vice president level or director level, depending on the company, I try to spend time with them. Yes, we're a remote company, but I spend 100 days a year on the road. So I'm seeing these people on a regular basis. I just got back this weekend from 3 days with my leadership team in Cancun at our leadership retreat.
Nice.
And we spent literally the entire time together. And I'm sure we're all exhausted, but it was productive and shared my heart and the vision for the company. So one of the most important things is helping people understand not just the what, but the why. If you tell people what you want them to do, they'll hopefully follow it and do it. If you explain to them why you want it, when they have to improvise, they'll know what it is that you would want them to do most of the time.
That's true. And the vision casting too, making sure that the team is in alignment with that. Would you be open to sharing, like, how do you tie the mission or the vision of the companies or the vision, the overarching mission towards how they can take that home and apply it in their day to day? Because I think there is a gap between here's the grandiose picture, but how do you have the teams live that out on a daily basis?
Yeah, I think what helps is having both a long range and a short term plan. We just went through our 3 year plan, going literally season by season, every 3 to 6 months, what the company would be doing.
Okay.
And I think it really helped as we've brought in some new leaders in the last couple of months that are new to the team. It helped them see, like you said, 7 businesses. That's a little crazy. Why? And I was able to show them that, well, these will be consolidating in the next 6 months into one
Mm.
company. This one will probably divest in time and just help them see the plan. And then also just being readily available. I mean, this is the modern day. And aside from my camera not working on this, it's pretty easy to get a hold of people. So we have people in 3 countries and 8 states in the US. A cell phone can reach any of them, or we use Google Meet or Slack or what have you. We don't use Slack, excuse me. We use Teams for some companies.
Yeah, the always on, the always available and like open door policy. To shift gears a little bit, so I know that the vision and the mission create alignment, create motivation, and also create almost like consensus that here's what we are going to conquer.
Mhm.
Here's what we're going to do. Here's why we're doing it. When it comes to being able to provide for the team and give either I'm working with some clients, we're looking at how do we shift to performance-based pay with profit sharing, and if they meet certain milestones per quarter, they get X amount of gifts. How did you decide to structure that and also do the give back component to the work that you're doing within your companies? Is it each at the individual company level or is it the overarching holding company level? Tell me a little bit more about that.
Sure. That's something that we actually have done since day one.
Okay.
It's something that's core to our DNA and core to who we are and our beliefs. Personally, I'm a Christian, not a particularly good one, but I've always been a believer in the tithe, and it's something I've done for almost 20 years now. And so the question came about of how do you do that with a business? When you have a paycheck and you make $1,000, you give 100, no problem. When you have a business, is it gross revenue? Is it net revenue? Is it take home pay, et cetera?
Mhm.
And probably 15 years, closer to 10 years ago now, with my first real business, I decided that I was going to take a certain percentage of profits and go towards charity and 10%. And then I was also going to take 10% and give it back to the employees because
Oh,
without the
just a
employees,
cut.
I wouldn't have a business.
Okay.
And the model and eligibility criteria and how it's divided has certainly evolved over the years, depending on the company. But
Okay.
every company shares that. Minimum is 10% and 10% for the leadership team. Some companies go a little bit higher, but that's a core part of who we are. And it's just part of what we believe in.
I like that because usually when we're looking at designing profit sharing or different employee or team compensation routes, it really is up to the leadership and the founder of like how you want to split the pie, like what is fair and
Mhm.
what is not fair. That there's not, I think everyone's trying to find this ethereal formula or the calculation that's going to give you the perfect number. I like how simplistic you put it. It's like it's just 10 and 10. 10 goes out the door, 10 goes back to the people. And then you just are able to make it work that way. How is that without being too overly simplistic, is that how you looked at just designing it from the get-go and just making a nice clear and cut, or is it more
More,
complexity behind the door?
it gets more complex every year or every quarter, I should say, because we do it quarterly.
Okay.
New people are coming in. It certainly becomes harder to gauge people's contributions because if you have one person that's leading an operations team and if you have one person that's a salesperson, how do you compare their contributions to the company? If
Okay.
one person is in accounting and one person is on customer service, it can become increasingly difficult to weigh their contributions because certainly you need all of them, but it definitely becomes more challenging quarter by quarter.
I like that. To shift gears yet again, I'm curious to know. I mean, I know you worked in the space before you started the companies before, so this wasn't just like a random business that you built. But tell me a little bit more about where we're at in the management space that you're in. What are some of the trends that you're seeing in the marketplace, and what new business would you create knowing what you know now?
Well, I mean, obviously, remote staffing is our biggest division, biggest company. COVID had a dramatic impact on that. In terms of where we're going, I think we're seeing more and more regulation. We recently, in the
Hmm,
last couple
really?
months, rebranded. Oh, sure. I think every time there's a problem, people want a solution and not realizing the solution is never as simple as the problem.
Hmm.
And I think if you study history, that invariably leads to more regulation, more hoops
Huh.
to jump through, more, perhaps I should say more complicated. More complicated would be a more exact way to do it.
Okay.
A couple months ago, we rebranded as Gordian Business Solutions and we moved several of our companies as divisions under that company.
Hmm.
So we have Gordian Staffing, Gordian Financial, Gordian Consulting. They still operate as separate divisions with their own people, but we've branded under one header because they've always been meant to work together because clients need them. The same clients need them. And going back in my own experience, it was a difficult time the first couple of years in business. I had some bad partners. I didn't know where to look. My last job was as a security guard, so I didn't have an MBA from Wharton or anything like that. And
Hmm.
I made a lot of costly mistakes out of ignorance. And I like to say that half of success is knowing what question to ask. The other half is knowing to whom you should ask it.
Hmm.
Everything else is details.
Yeah.
And the problem is, you can know, for example, a lawyer. We talk to lawyers on a weekly basis, if not daily. If you ask them a question, they'll give you the answer, but they'll rarely say, "Oh, you asked this. You should probably also be asking this."
Yeah.
Nobody
Yeah.
tells you what questions to ask, rarely. And it was a difficult time getting through that middle ground in a business's life. You
Yeah.
start off small, you're below the radar, you're too small to get hit most of the time, so you do okay. You're a big behemoth company, you have your own in-house counsel, you have in-house HR, all of that, you do okay. It's the middle-sized companies that have the most difficulty because they're
Interesting.
big enough to get the regulation and the inspections and the audits and all that, but they're not big enough to actually know what they're doing. They don't have the
Yeah.
money, all of that
Huh.
to get them through that turbulent time quicker. Staffing, accounting, consulting. Soon we'll have IT, fractional HR, stuff
Oh,
like
wow.
that. So the
Oh,
goal
that's
is to
pretty
have,
cool.
yeah, so that's how they all work together.
You're creating platform. No, and I've seen that firsthand actually living through mid-market team and took all these different regulations, didn't know what to do, expenses coming through just to figure the stuff out versus the bigger companies that have it already solved in-house. So you come in with an actual strategy is what I'm hearing as well. And then you provide here are the services that you need based on where you're at.
Exactly. We have one point of contact and we come in and we say, here's what you asked us for. And not to upsell, although I guess you could call it upselling, but
Yeah, but it's a
just so you
service.
know, it
Yeah.
is. Yeah. Upselling because we believe that they need it. Hey, if you need fractional HR services, or hey, if you need fractional IT services, or things like that, even just ask us what our other clients are doing. And we have strict client confidentiality, but we can say, a client that we have did this in your same situation and it was very successful. So we can
Mhm.
give advice based on what we've seen. We have clients in 27 states at this point. So
Mm.
we've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly.
No, I like that. And I like that a lot. So the differentiator is strategy, not just placing the right people. And one other thing that I noticed is that maybe this isn't true for all the fractional roles, but tell me about like balancing fractional roles or part-time roles or remote roles to having them dedicated to one particular client. Because typically sometimes when I'm looking at the fractional space or talking to people, it's like, oh, I'll dedicate 5 hours a week toward you or 15 hours a week towards you. How do you differentiate that way? And how do you balance that too profitably?
Well, most of our work is full time dedicated. That's where we started. That's our
Okay.
largest division. So, and that's our goal. Most of the time, that is going to be the best option.
Okay.
However, what we found is often you'll have a company, again, in that small to medium space, they're drowning, but there's no one job description that could solve things.
Mm.
They need 40 hours a week, but that 40 hours a week needs to be 5 hours of marketing, 10 hours of social media, 20 hours of admin, and 5 hours as an AP clerk, or fill in the blank. And I'm sure I probably just added up to 50 hours or something stupid,
Yeah.
but
Yeah. No,
but
that's
that's
nothing stupid. Yeah.
yeah, well, that's
50's
where
full
Gordian
time. Yeah.
Financial yeah, I work half time actually, 12 hours a day.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's how Gordian Financial started is we
Okay.
had clients that didn't need a full-time accountant. And so we started offering it that way. And then it grew and grew. And we have Gordian Shared Services now, which is similar. And that's how it started. So the goal would be propping them up until they get big enough to hire a dedicated HR manager or to hire a dedicated IT manager.
But you're actually building the platform. And when I say platform, I mean like the one-stop shop for all fractional or even
Exactly.
full-time and staffing. I think that's really powerful in the marketplace right now. Like I've seen the trends, but from your perspective, where are we heading towards in the fractional world and a remote fraction, like startup costs or growing costs? Like we don't need full-time like 100% of the time. So where are we
Yeah,
heading towards?
the amount of knowledge that we need to not only be successful but to survive is not only growing, it is becoming so diversified that no one person can answer it. And
Mm,
so instead of having, you could hire an in-house counsel all you want. I spend way more than the salary of a full-time attorney every
mm,
month, every year. The problem is 10% of that or 20% of that is employment law. 15% is international trade relations between the US and Mexico.
mm.
Some of it is contract law. So I couldn't hire one attorney to cover all of that. I need a bunch of part time people who are billing me at a much higher rate, of course. But the same logic applies. You can hire. We get the request all the time. I need an executive assistant. We make them sit down and say, what's a typical day? And the end result is no, you don't. You need, as I said before, 20 hours a week as admin, 10 hours in accounting, 5 hours, it's broken into different roles. And no one person is going to do all of those things well. So it's better to be realistic and find the right people in the right setup.
That makes a lot of sense. No, I love this. And I think leveraging the right talent and the new tools. Are you training your team and staff evolving to the new AI tools to potentially support and facilitate and execute their roles faster or more efficiently?
We're definitely looking at it internally. We brought on a new senior vice president recently who's going to be in charge of training and development, building our systems, things like that. So developing AI modules and how to use it effectively is definitely it's going to be like the internet or the smartphone.
Mhm.
It is going to change things drastically. How we will see, but that's why we have to stay agile. One of the
Yeah.
things I like to say is in difficult times people quote Darwin a lot,
Yeah.
survival of the fittest, and they always forget that it has nothing to do with being strongest. It
Mm.
is survival of the most adaptable to changing circumstance.
Yeah,
That's
the
survival of the
flexibility.
fittest. Exactly. It's flexibility, not strength. So the trick is stay agile.
I like that. I like that note. For our audience members out there, where's the best place for people to go to one, thank you for being on, and two, learn a little bit more about what you're up to?
They can find our website at slicingthegordianknot.com, or they can follow us on LinkedIn at Gordian Business Solutions.
Okay, cool. I'll put those links in the show notes. Rob, thank you again for being on.
Thanks so much for having me.
If you found value in today's podcast, please consider sharing this with someone that you believe could also benefit from this episode. You never know, you may be the catalyst that opens them up to a new way of operating their business and experiencing life. As always, it's an honor to be a small part of your journey. This is Raul Hernandez. Do good work.